It is March 21st, 2015, and I was just talking about how some of the cops in the area, you know, how I had thought that they were sort of friends, or I was being included in something, and I was actually getting set up to be raped later. And so what I want to describe is what it would look like, for example, in the downtown Coos Bay area when they were practicing some of this programming of me. And how many times, I first want to say how many times I had to do it. Well, I was in the area, like one of the times where they practiced this heavily, and it was being drilled into my brain. It was definitely programming. It was for an entire summer. So it was for like at least a couple of months, and there was at least a time frame of at least 1 month where it was like every single day. And my whole impression was that they told me and made me think that I was in quote unquote training to be undercover cop worker. They did not tell me we're going to be using you to program you so that Nanette, quiet. So that later down the road we can put you in a position of being vulnerable, thinking that someone in this area or in another area is one of us, and you know you've worked with us and bonded with us and been in our fight club, so so we are people you should be able to trust, because we're the government, and one of these times you're going to be asked to go with someone, and someone's going to give you a lot of money and or some information that is really going to help you in proving your entire case, or might be really important information for the government to save all these lives, that kind of thing. And so that was how they put it to me. So the entire time I thought I was intense. I thought I was in some kind of intense cop training boot camp type of a thing for undercover workers. You know, I mean, I kind of thought like this is the Quantico of the Northwest. And so I went along with all of it under the entire false pretense and idea that of what they had told me. And how many times, okay, so how many times did we practice it? For example, maybe like okay, let's say like every day for about at least 5 hours, for at least maybe 5 hours every day, repeatedly rehearsing this kind of thing. And if I did it wrong, actually they did torture me, but they did it kind of out of sight. Like they'd use a vehicle to block the main like public sight of me. And they weren't using the electrocution head brace out in public on me, but they were using knives. Like they would make me get up close to one of their sedans or cop cars, and they would cut me. Or sometimes if they didn't directly cut me, they'd threaten to cut me, or they'd use their handgun to threaten me, or they would imply that I might have to do a blowjob for them if I didn't do it correctly the next time. And they were using a lot of ultrasound, which was a different form of technology, made my back hurt really bad, because ultrasound waves, I think it's ultrasound, not microwave, but there are certain kinds of microwaves specifically, and they talked about these things. It's not like I was a nut and just thought these things. They talked about them. There are some waves that in a human body they get concentrated and focused on certain parts of the skeletal frame, because there are different parts of your body and bones that are more dense than other parts. There are other parts of your bones that have more fluid in them, other parts more dense, and for whatever reason with microwaves, certain kinds of waves will tend to accumulate and concentrate in your body as a target in certain areas. So, for example, like your pelvic area and your lower back is a more compact, dense bone area, and that skeletal part of your body. So certain kinds of waves will concentrate and accumulate and center in that area of lower back and and pelvic region. There are other kinds of waves that actually will center on the more fluid-containing parts of your body. And so I wasn't sure if it was actually like that or if it was ultrasound, because I heard ultrasound a lot, and ultrasound can be extremely painful at really high levels, and it gets centered into your lower back and lower abdomen region. And I also had a metal implant, like a magnet of some kind, put into my lower back at one point when I was a kid, and they were doing spinal draws from it. And and it was enough of a magnet that at the time someone could put like a metal hook or a metal something or other near my back on the outside of my skin, and it would stick there. There was something else that you could put it was like a hole in my back, and they would unplug this. There was like a thing that they would unplug. They would plug up and unplug to take spinal draws from, because they're doing it on a regular basis. And you could put this kind of there was a metal thing or some kind of a line or whatever that they would put in. And when they would put it in, you could hear it and feel it and the pressure, and it would like go, and it would it was like a magnet kind of a force that like the magnet that was inside where they had opened up a hole into my back, that would cause this other part that they had and would attach to stick like with magnetic force to the other part of the metal. And and I knew that it was a magnetic force because you could feel the pull and the tug from both sides, like from the inside and when it happened. It wasn't like someone just hooked something up and then tugged on it. It was like there was a magnetic field involved, which you could feel. So, as a kid, I kind of wondered, well, is something getting targeted to that part of my back? Did they forget to take out this metal thing that was in my lower back that they had used when they were regularly doing spinal draws? Because at one point in my house, I had spinal draws being taken at least 2 times a day. And I think it was supposedly with the excuse that I'd had a head injury or something back then, and they didn't want pressure building up, so they had to release, they had to withdraw spinal fluid to release the pressure, which is something that can be done on a medical basis. But whether that was an excuse and on the records anywhere or not, I'm not sure, but that's what happened. And so anyway, so it kind of felt like that. And when I was in this Coos Bay area, it was like a really super heavy duty, like ultrasound feeling. When I was in the car driving around with these guys and then having to get out, and then they were saying, okay, come with me, and then I was having to go with them. And if I didn't, I was getting threatened. And I kind of thought at the time, because they said this was part of their training, I sort of thought maybe they're just threatening me because, and what they said to me is they said, because I was older by that time, I wasn't like a little kid that they were programming, so they were trying to justify some of what they were doing. so that I would not run away, I guess. And they said, we're treating you just like we treat one of our other undercover cops, and we're making some consequences if you don't do it right, because if you don't do it right, it could cost you your life. So that's what they were saying to me, and they were making, because I was in this fight club where people beat each other up with a bunch of these cops, including me. They beat me up, and had me fighting them and everything. So they made it sound like they were going to punish me and threaten me and torture me if I didn't do it correctly, because I had to do it correctly because it was for my best interests. So that's how they put it to me when I was doing some of this practice out in the public area. And what would happen is I'd be out, like in Coos Bay, there's this whole area of like 2nd and Central, and it goes all the way back to the city hall. And there are some police stations, I think, out there, but there's a building that has a city hall and a library around there. And and there's a whole region. It's kind of like downtown Coos Bay area. That's how I would describe it. And they used that generalized location. There was a whole parameter that they used, and which was close to City Hall. I would say within all their practice and work on that was done within 5 miles all the way around of City Hall. And they would have me in a car with someone. So, for example, they have me in a car with my dad. Have my dad drive me around. Then he'd stop the car, and some guy would be outside and motioning me to go with him. And my dad would say, you know, don't go with him or whatever. And then I had to reject what my dad was saying, jump out of the car, sometimes shouting something back at him, run over to where the other guy was, who was one of the cop trainers, and then I was going with him. And then sometimes in the practice that we did, they give me like $1 or a couple bucks. After all the practice that we did, you know, they'd give me a little bit of money or whatever. And then they would say, one of these times it's going to be a lot of money. That was their incentive. And but it wasn't something I always thought about, you know, at the time. And so basically sometimes I would stay and I would say, I don't want to go. And in the car, and my dad's like, get out. And I'm like, I don't want to go. And he'd say, get out. And I would sometimes, a couple times, like after all this practice over and over, I'd start crying. I don't want to go. And if you don't get out, they'll do something that's worse, or something worse is going to happen, whatever. So even when I didn't want to get out of the car and keep practicing this whole thing, because I was tired of doing it and they were doing it all the time, I was still having to run out, shout something back at my dad, and put on a good enough act to all of the people who were watching me, and then run over to this cop or military person that was standing there, get into his car, and or say that yes, I'd go with him to his apartment. And then if I didn't act like I wanted to enough and didn't make it look good enough, you know, if it looked at all like I was being forced, or I was sad, or had any tears or anything like that, they were getting me up close to the cop car or to their own car that was undercover, twisting my hands, almost breaking my hands in a grip, pulling my arm around to the back, saying that they could arrest me sometimes, often using a razor-sharp pocket knife to cut me, making threats that I had to do blowjob for them, with the same kinds of idea, like, if you don't do this, you're going to get a blowjob. But often if I didn't do it right, they'd just hurt me right there on the spot, just in a discrete location. And then and then a couple of times they did get me in the electrocution head brace. Like, they'd electrocute me before we went out in public, in a building, in a room, and then they'd do it some more after we were done. So yes, I'll talk about that some more.